Welcome to our final session of Field of Awareness, and in this class today we will be combining everything that we have explored so far in this series and joining all of the little pieces together. And our intention and focus for our class today is catch and release. It is something that I like to use to remind myself of when my mind gets really busy, really loud, and it feels very difficult to have any clarity or peace in my headspace. So catch and release is just a reminder of what you've already learned so far, which is bringing awareness to your thoughts, knowing that your thoughts are not truth and they do not define you or say anything about you as a person, and you have the ability, and you're growing the ability, which is what we've been doing in this series, to notice your thoughts, acknowledge them, and release them, and move on in a state of awareness rather than a state of distraction, as we explored in Sutra 3.9. And so today we will be exploring Sutra 3.10, and again, my catchy phrase of catch and release. So if you'd like to join me in a seated shape, typical props as usual. I have my blocks, I have blankets. If you need anything else for your practice, please feel free to have it with you, and we will start in a seated shape of your choice. I'm going to sit on a blanket here. I created a little blanket wedge underneath my hips, but you could always use a bolster. And I'm going to choose to sit in a cross-legged position here. However, you can decide to sit however you like. And then we'll just take a moment to arrive, making any adjustments that you need to your seat or the space that you are in, really setting up for your practice and taking your time, because this is your time. This isn't about me, and this isn't about anybody else. This is about you, what you need from this moment. And as always, everything in this class is optional. It is an invitation that you reserve the right to accept or decline, depending on what you need in this moment. So I welcome you to tune into your body, your heart, perhaps starting to allow your needs for this moment to come up to the surface. Noticing if your body is making any requests of you today. And if so, how can you honor those requests from your body, those promptings? Once you feel a bit more settled, you might begin to shift your awareness from your body and your heart and move up into your headspace just for a moment, acknowledging the pace of your thoughts. Are they darting around? Are they moving really quickly? Or maybe a little bit sluggishly or kind of stuck. Or maybe there's this just kind of natural flow from one thought to the next. There's no judgment here. There's no right or wrong. Whatever you find in this moment is welcome. But just noticing. That's all we're doing. One more breath here, just noticing. And now I invite you to, if you haven't already, notice what you're thinking about and where your mind is focusing. Is it this moment, this practice? Or perhaps it's somewhere else. Maybe in the future, maybe in the past, maybe in your imagination. Can you catch your thought by bringing your awareness to it? And then release it, bringing your mind back to this present moment. Perhaps using your breath or your body as an anchor for the present moment. So what that looks like is noticing your breath moving in and out, or noticing how your body feels here in this moment. If it's helpful to notice what your body is touching, such as the floor, or maybe your hands resting on your lap or somewhere else. If that contact point is a helpful anchor, that is also a choice. And as we go through our practice today, I invite you to continue building the mental awareness and muscle of noticing where your mind goes. If it's not this practice, if it's not this moment, can you catch that? And then gently and with compassion, release the thought and come back to this present moment. That's it. That's the practice. You do not fail if you have to do that 100 times in this practice, because that is the practice. Each time you catch and release, your mental muscle gets a little bit stronger. And it's not a failure. So, if and when you're ready, I invite you to release all of your air out of your lungs. Big exhale out, followed by an inhale. And out. Option to take 1 or 2 more breaths, just like that, or however you want to. One more breath at your own pace. Sutra 3.10, Sutras of Patanjali 3.10 asks, how can we develop this state of attention? And the sutra says, by constant and uninterrupted practice, the mind can remain in a state of attention for a long time. By constant and uninterrupted practice, the mind can remain in a state of attention for a long time. Catch and release. It doesn't mean you have to be perfect. Just continue practicing. If you'd like to bring some intuitive movement into your neck, or shoulders, or side body, option to move for about 3 or 4 rounds of breath. However it feels welcome, maybe even adding some self-massage if that's what calls to you. Starting to connect with movement that honors your needs in this moment. Only you can decide what that looks like. 2 more breaths. If and when you're ready to come back to center, I welcome you to take a side stretch with me. So 2 options here. Option 1 is to inhale, reach your arms up, and then take your right hand, drop it back toward your neck or back. Left hand can come to your elbow as we lean over to the left. This is option 1. Option 2 is to bring your left hand to the floor. Maybe reach your right arm over. So similar movement, slightly different depending on what you need. Using your breath. And then switching sides when you're ready. Maybe going back and forth. Or you might take a pause, a little bit of an extended pause, in whichever choice you choose. We'll take another couple breaths here. Switching sides whenever you want to. Starting to find some completion, maybe moving through your shoulders, moving through your neck. And then with your hands finding their way down to your knees or your lap. Option 1 is here. As we take a seated cat-cow, you could begin to inhale and draw your whole spine forward, maybe even peeling your shoulders back as you breathe in. And as you exhale, curling inward. If it's helpful to release your hands from your legs, you might simply reach them out, kind of like they're wings, like they're flapping back. Inhaling, open. Exhale, closed. Palms might reach out in front of you. So 2 choices here. We'll take another 4 rounds of breath. Noticing how it feels in your front body as you open up. And then checking in with your back body as you curl inward. Starting to make your movements a little bit smaller. You might take your time coming back to center. Checking in, noticing any differences here. And then inhaling your arms up when you're ready. You might begin to exhale, drop your elbows. Option 1 is to take cactus arms here, but instead of drawing your whole spine forward, which you could, but a second option, if you're curious, is to find neutral with your spine and then peel your elbows back like you're just drawing your heart space forward. It's a very different action and it feels quite different as well. So you could find that. Breathing in for 1 more breath. And then an exhale to release. Let's just take a few breaths here. That was a lot of heart opening. So can you bring some awareness to your heart space or wherever you are feeling an increase in sensation in your body? And if so, wherever that may be, what does it feel like? One more breath here. You can stay here as long as you want. There's no need to rush away if this place is still serving you. If and when you are ready to move on, you might begin to meet me in a tabletop shape. Moving any props away that you need to. I'm gonna have a blanket underneath my knees just to provide some support. You could do so as well. And as always, you could drape a blanket over your hips if that feels a little bit, if having your hips open like that feels a bit more exposed, you could always drape a blanket over your lower back and hips. Opening it up to your desired area. But I'll meet you in this tabletop whenever you get here. We have a few options here. Option 1, you could take a moment to extend your legs out, sitting as we were just sitting for quite a few minutes. Maybe rolling through your ankles if that calls to you. And option 1 is to find a child's pose. If you are feeling like your body just needs a little bit more grounding today, and you're perhaps a little bit more low energy and your body needs more rest, child's pose might be a good place for you. So you could take your knees a little bit wider than hip distance and then allow your toes to touch back behind you. And then sending your hips back toward your heels, you could walk your hands out, maybe allowing your forehead or the side of your head to come to your mat. Or you could always keep your gaze lifted, maybe stacking your fists and resting your chin, if that feels safer for you. Okay, so option 1 is child's pose, however you want it. Option 2 is our puppy pose. So from tabletop, you could slightly engage your core just enough, just to take out any of the sway from your lower back. And this just protects our lower back and the lower vertebrae there. And then you could walk your hands forward and slowly, keeping that mild engagement in your core, allow your forehead to come down toward the mat. It doesn't have to touch, but if it does, you could rest your forehead here. And then option 3 is down dog. Now these 3 options are going to be available to you quite a few times during class. So you can choose which one feels welcome to you in the moment. And if you choose down dog, I invite you to pedal out your feet here. If that feels relieving to you and your hamstrings, I know it does for me. And if your body is feeling very tight, it might be helpful to take your feet as wide as your mat. Taking a wider stance can create a little bit more room for your body to open, because we don't have to rush into anything. And if you chose one shape and you enjoyed it for a time, but now you're curious about trying a different shape, you can always change your mind. You're not stuck anywhere. You are free to move how you want to move. Okay, so another breath or two, exploring whatever shape you've chosen, and then we'll continue moving through our class. One more breath. If you are in down dog, you might explore releasing your heels down toward the mat. They might not touch, and that's okay, they don't have to. And then releasing your knees back down to your mat. We'll just take a pause. I'll meet you in a child's pose or tabletop, whichever one you prefer. We'll just breathe here for a moment. Catch and release. Notice where your mind goes. Has it floated away from this practice? If so, can you gently bring it back? Catch the thought, acknowledge it, and release it. coming back as many times as it takes. If you are ready to continue moving, I invite you to meet me in a tabletop shape. Two options here. You could find some engagement in your core. Option 2 is to tuck your toes and hover your knees maybe an inch off of the mat. Similar, but a little bit more engagement. So depending on what you need today, you can choose. Taking another breath in here. And then as you exhale, option 1 is to shift your arms and your hips back like you are kind of loading up a springboard. And then release the heels down for down dog. Now, if your hamstrings are super tight, that's going to feel really intense. So you could return back to pedaling out your feet. Option 2, if down dog is not in your practice today, option to take puppy pose with the knees still connected to the floor, your hands walking forward and releasing your forehead and chest toward the mat in that direction. Or you could always stay in tabletop. All right. With your next inhale, option 2, find your way into down dog or tabletop and extend your right leg back behind you. And then as you exhale, drawing your right knee in toward your chest and sending your right, two options here. Option 1 is to send your right foot out to the side, connecting it with the floor, that we're going into fallen triangle. Okay, your hands can stay rooted here, or you could peel your left shoulder up, maybe coming onto the blade of your left foot as you find this fallen triangle here, your choice of where you place your arm. Option 2, if that is just like, no, not my practice today, you could release your right knee to the floor. Very similar shape here, but a bit more supported. And then option to reach your left arm up. Left foot can stay connected to the mat. So fallen triangle or supported side plank. You choose. And let's take another 2 breaths here. Maybe you explore a range of movement with your left arm. 1 more breath. All right. Both hands connect with the mat if you're ready to move on. And then we'll draw our right knee back into our chest and plant the right foot on the floor, releasing your left knee, coming into a low lunge. Now, if you need to grab a hold of your right ankle or first pass into tabletop and then move your leg forward, however you get here is all good, okay? However you need to feel supported today in this moment, I welcome it. And I celebrate your choices. So you could grab a hold of some blocks here or no blocks, your choice. And settling into this low lunge. Taking a moment to find this shape in your body. Remember that the shape molds to you and your needs. Your body does not mold to this shape. Okay, everything molds to you. How can this shape change so that you feel supported? What do you need here to be in this place? Option to stay right here in this low lunge if this is continuing to serve you. If you're curious to take a twist, you might leave your left hand connected to the block or the floor as we inhale and exhale, peel your right shoulder back. Option to reach your right hand up towards the sky. Taking a few breaths. And an exhale to soften and release. maybe you take a reverse lunge as we float the right hand back up, bringing it to our opposite leg. So right hand to the back of the left leg, or a block right back behind you as your left arm reaches up and over. Your heart might open up to the sky, only going as far as you want to. And if you don't want to use the block, you don't have to. It's your choice. Take one more breath here. And then an exhale, windmilling forward when you feel complete. Because if you don't, you can stay there longer. And we'll begin to find our way back. So, option to tuck your back toes and lift your back knee. Hands planted to the floor. You could step your right foot back. And option one is to find your way and back into your downward facing dog, or child's pose or tabletop. You choose. There's always puppy pose as well. Lots of options here depending on what you need today. We'll take one more breath in between. Option for a big exhale. And then if you are ready to keep moving, you could inhale and extend your left leg back out behind you. That's optional. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. And then exhale. Left knee could hug in close toward your chest. Option one is to kick out your left leg like it's a kickstand for fallen triangle as we peel the right shoulder open, reaching the right hand up, or left knee connects with your mat for a nice supported side plank. You decide here. And we'll take another 2 breaths. Maybe you find a range of motion with your right arm, noticing how it feels when you extend it overhead compared to close to your ear. Last one. Connecting your right hand with the floor and drawing your left foot in and planting it up toward your left hand, releasing your right knee to your mat. We'll meet in a low lunge here, however you get here, and there's no rush. Please take your time. This is your practice. You don't have to keep up, quote unquote. Whenever you get here, I'll be here waiting. Feeling into this low lunge. How can this shape better serve you? Is it by adding blocks? Is it by having movement instead of stillness? What is your body asking for, and how can you honor it right now? For 2 more rounds of breath. You might decide to stay right here in this low lunge. Or if you'd like to explore the twist on this side, your right hand could stay connected to the block or the floor as we inhale. And then exhale, peeling left shoulder back, reaching your arm up. One or 2 more complete breaths here. And then with your next exhale, you could bring your left hand back down to the block, or you could windmill it back, reaching your right arm up. Maybe you reverse your low lunge. And again, you could utilize your blocks here for your left hand, or bring your left hand to the back of your right leg. And if reversing your low lunge does not serve you today, please feel free to skip it. One more inhale and exhale here. And then you could start to windmill your hands back forward if they aren't already. In your own timing, you could plant your hands, send your left leg back. And again, option for Adho Mukha Savasana, which is down dog, child's pose, puppy pose, tabletop pose. You choose. Let's take 3 full breaths wherever you decide to be. Catch and release. One more breath. With your next inhale, you might find your way into a tabletop or a down dog if you aren't already there. And then we'll begin walking our hands backward, and I'll meet you in a forward fold at the back of your mat. Or if it's easier to take it at the front of your mat, that's okay too. And this is a bit of a wider forward fold, so your feet could be wider than hip distance. Option to add a bend into your knees, as deep or as shallow as you like it. And then here you might allow the back of your neck to soften, perhaps shaking your head no just for a moment, and then nodding it yes, allowing your head and your neck to soften. Option here to stay in forward fold, or if you'd like, you could begin to bend your knees, turn your toes out, and squat the hips down, maybe placing a block underneath your hips. Or if you don't want a block, you don't have to have it. Option to bring your elbows to the inside of your knees, maybe your hands meet at prayer. Or you could bring the elbows to the inside of your knees and allow your arms to reach out in front of you. Two or three more breaths. I welcome you to notice where your inhales are flowing. And if you're curious, you might allow your inhales to go all the way down into your pelvic floor. And exhaling out. One more breath, however you want to take it. If you're ready to leave this squat, you might begin to bring your hands back down to the mat, lifting the hips, straightening out the legs, finding your way back into this forward fold for just a moment. And then walking your hands forward again for down dog or tabletop, because we're just going to be here for one breath, just enough time to arrive. And then if you'd like to, you could inhale and extend your right leg out, back behind you, and exhale, draw the right knee in toward your body, toward your chest. And then you have two choices here. You could find a pigeon. So right ankle can head on over to your left wrist as we lower our right knees down, lower our hips down. Okay, this is option one, and I have props here, but I just want to show you the two options really quickly so that if you know which one you want, you can just go into it instead of hearing me talk so much. So option 1 is pigeon pose. Option 2 is like a 90-90, so like 90-degree angle. So your right leg is already in a 90-degree angle, and then your back leg can bend and come into a 90-degree angle. Hopefully you can see this. I'll turn my body. So that when you fold over, it's the same position for your upper body. The only difference is your legs. So pigeon pose would have just a straight leg, and the 90-90 would be with a bent knee. Okay, so if you choose pigeon pose and this pose is feeling, and first of all, if you know where you want to be, go ahead and find that whenever you're ready to. And if you need some propping, if that support is just really welcome today, and you are in pigeon pose, or 90-90 really, but you could take a folded blanket or a block. I'll show the block first. And if your hips are really high up and kind of just hanging in space, and you're like, oh, that feels kind of intense, you could take a block and slide it underneath your right hip, okay? And if that feels like, oh, that's too tall, I do want support, but not so much space there, you could take a folded up blanket and slide it underneath your right hip. And then, of course, the blanket is malleable, so you can fold it to your desired cushion thickness, depth, whatever works. So finding pigeon or 90-90, we're gonna be here for about 8 rounds of breath. However, you can always decide if your practice, if your body is asking you to be here for less breaths or more. So, tuning in, noticing where in your body you are feeling the effects of this pigeon pose or 90-90 pose. If you decided to fold forward, maybe your elbows have come to the mat. And if your head is hanging in space and your neck would like some support, you could always take a block and rest your forehead on it. Or you could, if you don't have a block, you could always bring your elbows to the floor, lift your hands and rest your forehead in the palm of your hands. It's very common here in hip opening poses like this to clutch and hold on to the muscles around our hips. And it prevents us from surrendering to this shape and from the gifts and the benefits that it has to give us. However, it is easier said than done. And so if you tune into your body right now and you're noticing that there's a lot of clutching around your hips, you might explore just a little softening, if that calls to you. You don't have to soften all the way. That might be overwhelming, or maybe it's welcome, but if it does feel overwhelming, just know that you can release maybe 10% and then see what happens. I'm guessing that was about 8 breaths or so. So if you have decided that you are complete here, you might begin to press your hands into the floor, lifting your body and sitting onto your right hip, removing anything that's underneath you, and swinging your left leg around to come into a cross-legged shape. Again, no rush. You'll get here when you get here. With your next inhale, you might lift your arms up overhead. And then as you exhale, you might begin to twist your torso to the right. Your right hand might find the floor behind you. Your left hand might find your right knee. Finding a seated twist for 2 to 3 rounds of breath. Only twisting as far as you want to. Pain does not always mean it's deeper or better. With your next inhale, you might rebound back to center and pause for a couple breaths. What do you notice? When you're ready to move on, you might find your way back into a tabletop or down dog. This will be our very last one of the class. And then inhaling, option to lift your left leg up towards the sky or out back behind you. Exhaling your left knee in close to your body as we find either pigeon pose. Left ankle could come toward your right wrist. And then settling down into our mats. Or bending your back knee into a 90-degree angle, finding 90-90. Remembering that you have your choice of props here, whether that be a blanket or a block. And each side of your body could be very different. So what you need on one side may be different than the next. So taking your time to set up, there's no rush. And then once you feel settled, once you arrive, we'll take 8 complete rounds of breath right here. Perhaps tuning back into the muscles surrounding your hips, your tailbone, and noticing if there's any clenching, any tightening. That's like another word for it would be muscle engagement. So it's not just having tight muscles, but it is your muscles actively being engaged. And if so, that's okay. It can be a self-protecting action, but sometimes we're not aware of it. So we can just bring awareness there. And if you're curious to soften, you might start with just 5 or 10% and see what happens. Knowing that you can leave this pose at any time. No questions asked. Final breath here. Stay here until you decide that you are ready to move on. And when you are ready to move on, you might begin to press your hands into the floor, sit onto your left hip, and swing your right leg around. I'll meet you in any seated shape. With your next breath, or when you choose to, you could reach your arms up overhead. And then an exhale, if you'd like to take the twist, you could turn your torso to the left. Left hand might find the floor. Right hand might find your left knee. Twisting here for 3 breaths. Beginning to find completion. And rebounding back to center whenever you feel ready to. Pausing here. And then we'll begin to shift into our time of meditation. So if you'd like, you could find your bolster to sit on or a blanket, finding any seated shape that feels supportive and allows you to be in a state of easeful awareness. And I would like to meditate for about 2 to 3 minutes. However, it's always your choice. And so if you find that you would rather take a shavasana during that time, you could do that as well. You could be in any shape you want for that. But either way, whatever you choose, will be here. So setting up for our meditation, you might bring some awareness to the seat beneath you, noticing what's supporting you, what's holding you up. And then noticing your tailbone and climbing your awareness up your spine, all the way up, up, up until your neck and the back of your skull. You might allow your spine to float up towards the ceiling, and you might even allow a slight tuck to your chin, just very minuscule, enough to feel a little bit of extension in your back, in the back of your neck. Hands can rest wherever you'd like. And then shifting your awareness to your breath. This is option 1. Option 1 is to watch your breath move in and out at whatever pace is natural for you. And any time you find that your thoughts slip away from your breath, catch and release. So catch the thought, acknowledge it, release it, come back to the breath. Option 2 is to allow yourself to be in the seat of the observer without the breath as the anchor, but just simply noticing your thoughts pass, catch and release, catch and release. So 2 choices there, breath as an anchor or not. And the second option is definitely a little bit more challenging. It is for me. And so if it feels challenging, just know that it is challenging and it takes a lot of practice, something I'm still practicing all the time. So you choose breath awareness or not. But either way, catch and release as many times as it takes, and we will be here for the next, let's say 2 minutes, and I'll set even a little stopwatch. So we are there for exactly that amount of time. And we'll begin now. Anytime your mind wanders, just bring it back. We're halfway there. If you'd like, you could release this meditation, release this awareness. That was 2 minutes. Checking in. How do you feel? If you haven't already and you'd like to, you might find a shavasana, a time of rest here, moving into any shape that allows you to rest and staying there for as long as you like. If you're ready to complete your practice, I invite you to bring your hands to heart center or resting your hands wherever it feels right. You might join me for a full exhale out and a collective breath in. If you have any questions about this series or meditation or sutras or what we've done and learned, I invite you to comment or message me, whatever works best for you, and I am happy to answer any questions and offer any support that you might need. I hope that you feel safe, connected, and at home in your body. Thank you.